Welcome back to Housemate Home. I'm your host, Diana Andes, a local realtor here in Montgomery, New Jersey. Today, I'm joined by my colleague, Shivani Jani, and we're pulling back the curtain on what really happens in real estate, things buyers and sellers don't usually see, common misconceptions, and insider tips to make your next move a smooth one. So welcome to the podcast, Shivani.
Hi, Diana. Thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you for joining. So I really want to just dive right in. There's a lot of things going on in real estate. People are watching reality TV all the time, HGTV, or they're looking on Zillow, trying to get ideas of what their home is worth. And I want to ask you, Shivani, what's one big misconception you think people have about real estate, or, how has HGTV influenced people from your perspective?
Great question. I think when you're watching HGTV, we've all been, victim to it, where we're just sitting there for hours watching these home buyers come in and, buy these houses right out. I think people don't understand that the process is a little bit more complicated than what they're watching on, made for TV home buying. Of everything from getting yourself, pre-qualified, to finding the right realtor who will work with you, to then actually home buying and looking, and then realizing that, it just doesn't come down to 5 choices. And at the end of it, boom, that's the one I want. And realizing that sometimes it takes a really good strategy in place in order to land that first house that you find. So I think it's the time sense that is a little bit longer sometimes than what most people see on TV and think that is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it would be amazing if that we could just show our clients homes, like 3 houses, which one do you want? And they just win that house, right? One of the other things. Yeah, exactly, right. And the other thing I think is also kind of misleading is that some of these buyers, I don't know if they've gotten a pre-approval or they're buying cash, right? Because sometimes, I don't think people have in their mind how much they want to spend on a house, but they haven't talked to an actual mortgage lender to find out what they can buy, right? Have you found that in your experiences?
100%. I think a lot of people do understand they have an idea of their financial situation, but when it comes to your actual buying power, that's really only going to come down when you sit with a mortgage lender who then kind of lists out that, hey, it's just not about the home price. It's about all the closing costs or anything else. It could be, things that you have to repair costs and all of that. They don't take that into account sometimes, I feel. So when you're having that real conversation with them, it gets a little surprising. Some come prepared, some are, right on it, but then there's a great majority who start out like, oh, I think I'm just gonna look, but then it ends up becoming like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be shopping here, maybe I need to be a little bit more here, and that's more realistic.
Absolutely, because I think a lot of people know just from listening to other people, it's like, oh, it's common, like they have a misconception that they have to put 20% down. So sometimes they're like, okay, I got to put 20% down. But then there's closing costs that are involved, right? And all these extra fees that need to be paid up front. And sometimes buyers don't realize that. So it's kind of, I always suggest buyers to talk to a lender first, figure out what is their shopping budget, so that this way we're not like looking at homes that are way above their price point, or sometimes they could afford more than what they thought they could, because perhaps they don't need to put 20% down.
You bring up a good point about the whole thing with a mortgage lender, because I think that in itself gets a little scary. I think especially if you're a first time home buyer, if you connect with the right mortgage lender, they're going to tell you about all the different packages and benefits and credits and things like that you are eligible for. So I think having that first conversation can kind of take away some of that, trepidation that people sometimes have when they're going into this whole process to begin with.
Yeah. What was something like when you first started working in real estate? What was like a process or something that surprised you the most?
Wow, great question. I've got a few in mind. I think sometimes the process does not have to be as long as you think it is, from the time you find a house to the time you put in that offer. I always had that, that idea like, oh, it must take like 6 months. Yes, it can take 6 months, but it could also take, 60 days, from the time you find something, put in an offer, and you're able to close. So it was just understanding that whole from start to finish when it's a clean deal. But then again, you also know that sometimes it could take a little bit longer.
Absolutely. And I think that you're right, Shivani. I totally forgot that. A lot of times people forget how quickly a real estate transaction happens. People talk about listing their home. They're like, well, how long will how long will the whole process take? I'm like, well, I can come and take photos for you tomorrow, but like, you know, are you
Are
ready
you
to sell
ready?
your Yeah, are you ready? Because right now in our market, we're seeing deals close 30 to 45 days. So, when people hear that, they're like, I can pack up 30 years of stuff in 30 days. I'm like, all right, then let's like, the sellers, in Montgomery area, it's still a seller's market. So they have more control about that date of when they want to close. But also as a seller, then you have control thinking, all right, what do I need to do first before I list my house, knowing that the timeline is like 30 to 45 days. So,
I think that's a great point, and kind of like piggybacking on that, if you're even thinking about selling, that first time is, that not that conversation with the realtor or the lender. Sometimes it's a little bit ahead of time of, hey, I'm thinking about selling my house, and getting your house prepared, before you start having those other conversations, because they can go quickly.
absolutely. When you talk about getting your home prepared, what are you seeing like when you take your buyers out to look at homes? Like, what are some things that maybe like a homeowner can do to increase the value of their home? I have some sellers that think they're like fixing holes in the wall, which are important, but I was like, hey, you got other things that you should probably focus on fixing, not versus that. Like, what are buyers pointing out from your experience? Or, like, what are they looking for?
I think a lot of times it's something simple as just even getting a fresh coat of paint on the walls. Just
Hmm.
refresh the house. You can tell when a house has been newly painted. It gives that, and you're really, what you're doing is when you're getting your house ready or even staging your home, you're giving that buyer the idea, they're able to now envision themselves living in that house. So I tell people, like, I know you probably love this yellow that you have on the walls, but let's kind of bring it back. Maybe we do a neutral or something like that to make it so that other people are able to come in and see themselves living there. Staging, I don't think is talked about enough. I've seen empty houses that, we've been able to sell. I've seen houses that have been totally packed. But I think when you stage a home correctly, and declutter, you're gonna then be able to get really a maximum price. And and you and I both know that staged homes sell for much higher than homes that are not.
So it sounds like one would be declutter, right? Because we want to showcase the best aspects of the house. You don't want like a big armoire covering a beautiful window.
Wait, I have an armoire right behind me. What are you talking
Oh.
about?
Is there a window behind there?
No, no.
All right, so you're good then. But yeah, you want to showcase, so decluttering, and and everyone could do that. The thing is, like, less is more when you're showing a house. I heard you say paint, which I totally agree. Neutral colors, even though you might like chartreuse or like lime yellow walls, the majority of customers, I mean buyers, may not. So the more neutral you are, the easier. Like, vanilla, nothing too crazy. And what was the other one you said? Declutter. Oh, staging. Yes, staging is surprising to me because to me, when I look at a room, I know if my queen bed will fit in here or my king bed. Like I just, for me, like my mind works that way. But I didn't realize that a lot of people can't visualize it. Yeah, they're like, will my bed fit in here? Where will my dresser go? Like it's hard for them. And I was like, oh, I didn't realize not everyone, everyone looks at a house differently. But when you stage it, they could get an idea of like, okay, this size bed fits here. Oh, this is my sofa could go here and the TV can go there. And it helps them visualize the room in a way they may not have innately like just kind of come up with just looking at a blank.
Agreed, agreed. I think it creates a whole different energy into the home.
Hmm.
You're a great stager, by the way. I've seen your work. I think it's, you really have an eye for staging and, how things, the layouts and things like that should be.
Oh, thank
So
you. Thanks. I love doing it, and it's just like it's fun to be able to mesh the two, like the creative side and then the real estate side. What's one part of like real estate process that you think is more complicated than clients realize? A lot of people out there try and for sale by owner and like do all these things on their own. But like, give us a little behind the scenes of what it's like to be a real estate agent.
no, you're right. Okay, I'm gonna, and I'm not gonna blame HGTV and all of, Zillow and all of, they're all resources. I look at it that way. However, I think what we have now across the board in almost every industry, we have savvy consumers. They come in with all of this knowledge that they've done. they've Googled the hell out of everything, and they come in with all this information, and they come to us as realtors to say, hey, what about this? And I think sometimes they complicate things, and we have to dial them back and say, all right, you know what, let's start here. Here's a roadmap of, whether it's home ownership or to sell your home. They have to understand why they're choosing a realtor. You mentioned for sale by owner. Sometimes it's a conversation. I've had conversations with them. What is it about, why are you selling it yourself? Is it because, you don't want to pay commissions, or, what? There's like 10 different reasons there. But
Yeah.
I think it's more of, you've got consumers who come in who realize that sometimes it's a little bit easier. If you trust your realtor is going to bring in a great team of people around you. And that's
Right.
really what I think clients need to understand. We have mortgage lenders at our tips, inspectors, appraisers, all that. We have all of the, a team of people, that of resources that we come to the table with. And clients need to realize that, we're here to help you. We're here to guide you through this process. And if we can't answer a question, somebody else on our team is going to be able to do that for you. That's our expertise.
Absolutely. I agree. It's like a group project, right? You want to be able to work with people that are all going to pull their weight. You don't want like some random person that got signed to your group and you're like, oh, they're not doing anything, or you have to follow up and then now do their work too. But I was like, I think it's funny to me because a real estate transaction is probably one of the most expensive transactions a person makes in their lives, right? It's like hundreds and thousands of dollars. And it surprises me the amount of people when people try and like cut corners or something in real estate and not hire the best professional or not hire the best group, because in the end you're leaving money, you're missing money, you might be missing things. And it's like, if you needed surgery, would you Google something and then try and have you do it yourself? Like, no, you would want somebody who's done it before, who does surgery or sell houses day in and day out, know all the people they need to call, something goes wrong, be able to give you the references for the best, best,
You're right. You're
or
right.
yeah. So yeah, it's just funny. I think it's always interesting. Like when you do real estate so much, a lot of times you're doing it so it's automatic, right? You forget some of the things that first time home buyers or first time sellers, the questions that they have or what's going through their minds. And I'm so glad that you were able to share some of insight from your perspective. I forgot some of them already.
Well, you know what? And you bring up first time home buyers. I think even whether you're first or this is like your second or fifth, that first buyer's consultation is so important. I'm not trying, I tell everyone I meet, whether I'm meeting you at an open house, I'm meeting you on the street, or even my friends, I'm saying, come on in, let's do this consultation. And really, I'm going to walk you through it. You may or may not know all the different steps it takes to, in this process. And we're going to answer any of the questions. Maybe you don't feel comfortable, in whatever setting you are in. Maybe now is the time you want to ask me a question about it. And, there's all questions are good questions.
Yeah, and the buyer consult is so important because we want to make sure you cover all the things in a buying process. Sometimes there's so many steps, and at least when you have like a consult, you are making sure you're checking all those boxes and kind of give a top level explanation. It's also an opportunity for you guys to both interview each other and see if, Shivani, you're the right real estate agent for me. Am I the right client for you? Because it is essentially a group projects too, right? We're working together, we're talking all the time. We want to be able to build that kind of trust and relationship to get that deal done smoothly and on time, and the
Agreed.
best deals possible. Yeah. So
Yeah.
Shivani, you have so if a buyer wanted to work with you, how would they reach out to you? Or how can I get started working with you?
I would definitely tell them, reach out to me, whether it's by email, realtybyshivani@gmail.com. They can find me on social at Curated by Shiv. I'm on Instagram. I'm starting to get on TikTok. Okay, don't, fault me on that one. But yeah, reach out, and, I love to connect with people. I love to share information. So even if I'm not going to help you on this transaction and you just want information, maybe you just want to pick my brain about something, I am 100% there, to answer any questions that you may have. But yeah,
And yeah, and Shivani, which areas do you cover? All of New Jersey,
I
Central Jersey?
I would love to say I cover entire New Jersey. However, that's a little difficult, to do all of that. But I primarily focus on the central and northern markets. So we're looking at whether it's Somerset County, Middlesex, Essex Union. I do this whole section right here.
Oh, great. Fantastic. All right. Well, Shivani, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. I look forward to doing more work with you and seeing you, working together, hopefully on a deal soon. And thank you guys all for joining and listening in. I'll see you guys on the next podcast. Thank you.
Thanks, Diana, so much. Bye.
Bye.